The Trump administration's explicit hostility towards transgender people is a well-documented and very public fact. Starting in his first term and now in his second, President Trump and his administration have carried out a systematic, years-long effort to roll back protections for people who identify as LGBTQ+. But the administration's actions towards transgender people are especially blatant. Trump's directives include targeting transgender students, banning trans Americans from military service, and giving federal agencies the go-ahead to overtly discriminate against their trans employees. While administration attacks on transgender people take many forms and are fostering fear in people who identify as trans, they're also impacting the families of trans men and women. In this touching interview, you'll hear the stories of Susan and Roger Smith of Brewster, Massachusetts. The parents of a transgender son, they describe what it's been like for them, living in a moment when bias against trans people is reaching a fevered public pitch. You'll hear, too, from their son, Alex, a 41-year-old trans man, assigned female at birth, who describes what it's like to be trans in this difficult and divisive moment in our nation's history. Their stories are a telling reminder that every public policy has implications for everyday people that play out far from the corridors of political power. They remind us, too, that the rollback of established legal rights for many Americans, including immigrants, transgender people, and the poor, is becoming increasingly the norm under the Trump administration. Susan, Raj, and Alex, welcome to Taking It From Here. It is so nice to have all of you here today. We are living in unprecedented times, as you know. The Trump administration has effectively declared war on transgender people. And I know that for all of you, this story, this development strikes very close to home because Susan, you and Raj are parents of a transgender son. Alex, you are that son. And I'd like to start today by asking each of you in turn to share with us how you're feeling about the state of our politics today and what it's prompting you to think about doing in response and to really protect the family that you have created. So, Susan, we'll start with you.
Thank you, Rick. I appreciate your meeting with us today. For me, I think this is unlike any time I've lived in my 77 years, and I feel drawn to resist in any way that I can. I feel that many marginalized folks are under attack, and I want to be as strong an ally as I can and to speak out, and that takes a lot of different forms of resistance, but I want to keep up a beacon of hope that this is an aberration in our culture. I don't believe this will win, and I believe that all these marginalized folks and LGBTQ plus folks, trans folks, have been with us for a long time and will always be here and cannot be erased.
Yeah. Raj, you of course are a retired history teacher, and you and I have talked in the past about how what you see happening right now is part of our country's and our culture's DNA. Can you tell us what you mean by that with that historical perspective of our history in mind?
Well, I think that fear of the other is pretty much baked into our DNA. By our DNA, I mean our country's DNA. When you think about it, slavery was part of the original Constitution. And there have been waves. Every time there's a wave of immigration, the Irish in the 1840s, the Germans in the late 1840s, the Germans when we were at war with Germany, these are families that had lived in the United States for generations, yet they had a German name. All of a sudden, then there is a backlash, and we have the Chinese Exclusion Act and just all these fear-driven all-American parties. The pendulum goes one way, and then the pendulum swings back, and I feel as though, just like other times in the past, are trans people who are being scapegoated, and that fever will burn itself out in the United States and then will swing back in the other direction. What I don't know is how far up the pendulum is going to go.
So, Alex, for you, this is an exceptionally personal time. You're a 41-year-old trans man. You were assigned female at birth. What's going through your head and your mind these days, and through the heads and minds and hearts of your friends in the trans community?
Yeah, thanks, Rick. Thanks for having me. To echo what both of these two just said, I think that these are really unprecedented times, and I think that in my community and amongst my friends, I think that we're just constantly sharing information with each other about the current climate. It feels like it changes every other day, every other week, every other month, and sometimes feels exceptionally scary and sometimes feels okay and manageable. And I think that people are constantly weighing day in and day out what's the active threat level right now, right? For me here today in this moment, or to on daily activities and things that probably weren't questioned as much, even a few years ago. But I think that as trans community in general, we come under attack for a lot of things and have for a long time. And riots have started because of trans people. You think about Stonewall. We are a vulnerable population, period. And we're much more vulnerable today than we were a year ago, and it's scary times.
Why is it, and I'm going to give you a chance to respond to this,
Yeah.
if you could speak on a big stage to straight cisgender America about being trans yourself, what would you share with others about what it means to be trans, and what are the misconceptions out there about transgender people in your view?
Yeah, I mean, I think at a really, just the most basic level, I think that people are very scared of trans people. And I think a really major reason for that is just they have not, or they maybe are not aware of, or have not encountered or have people in their community and in their family who might be trans. And I think that, fear of the other is a real thing. And I think it's a slippery slope. I think that people might have preconceived notions or fear that, like, if someone is trans and they might make someone else trans, or it's just like, yeah, are you going to make my kid gay?
Like you're going to catch it.
Yeah, are you going to catch it, right?
Yeah.
If like if the rules of the road, it's the same as like male and female, we have the trans community is much larger and broader and a larger spectrum than just two boxes. And I think that some people who are afraid of it want to know, like, I would like to have these boxes checked, and if it's not in a box, then what the heck are we even talking about? And it's scary to not be able to put a finger on something, or someone who identifies as non-binary, that kind of thing. I think that people feel like they don't know where the curbs of the road are, and yes. I just think that's about exposure and education, and I think that fear factor can come down quite a bit with just knowing people and having just normal conversations.
Yeah. So I think it's fair to say that a lot of people watching this broadcast will probably not think that they know anybody who's transgender, or think that it's this very strange concept. So can you share a little bit of your backstory in terms of what it was like? You were assigned female at birth, as one says, but at some point when you were very young, you began to feel, you told me in our earlier interview, that something wasn't quite right. Can you kind of share with us a little bit of your backstory growing up? And then I'm going to ask your folks here to kind of share how they accompanied you on this journey. So please.
Yes, sure. Yeah. I think my journey about my kind of own gender and gender expression identity started at a very young age. I think it started at 3 or 4. I had an older brother who I looked up to, and I remember when in the beginning of really this is really far deep memory stuff, but really as you start to treat kids differently if they are a boy or a girl, I remember that slightly starting to be treated a little bit differently as a girl and not really wanting to wear the dress or, that kind of thing. I think my brother was more quickly put into karate and I was put into gymnastics and that kind of thing. Just like very small moments of, oh, I don't want to be doing the girl thing. I don't, and I identified more with all the boys. I wanted to be doing all the boys' activities. And, there's a whole life arc there,
Your parents, by the way, told me about not wanting to wear the dress for the christening.
Yes.
Yeah. Talk about that.
Yes, I remember very, I got to a point where I knew that I really did not want to wear a dress. And I remember my mom asking me about it. I remember she took us shopping. In my memory, it's the JCPenney, though. I don't know. I remember going to the mall. I remember going to like a department store and being able to go around and find all the dressy components that that made me feel good. And I kind of essentially came out with a 3-piece black velvet suit, and it wasn't a dress. And I felt like I looked great, and I felt almost like it was my party walking down the aisle of the christening, and it wasn't, but I felt so proud of what I was wearing. I felt like I could actually express myself in a really real way.
So let me ask, if I may, Susan and Raj, when Alex expressed that feeling, how did you respond, and where did you go with your parenting from that point forward?
I think Susan should start with that, and then I'll build.
I had talked to both kids and said, we're going to this christening. It's a dressy affair. You both need clothes. We're going to go to the mall. Matt, you need a suit. Alex, you need a dress. We're going to go tomorrow. And Alex just collapsed in great sobs of grief and distress. And I was stunned. I didn't know what was going on. And I held Alex and I said, what's wrong? Honey, you can't wear your jeans and your play clothes. And Alex said, I don't want to wear my play clothes, but I just don't want to wear a dress. And I went, oh, that's what you're so sad about. And I said, you don't need to wear a dress. Okay, I get it. And as Alex said, we got a lovely pantsuit that was very snappy and terrific. And you did not wear a dress anymore. But also, it was such a strong reaction. I immediately talked to Raj and said, this is really something that's going on here that I had not understood, and we need to not screw this up. We need to understand what we're doing here, and it's uncharted territory for us, at which point we looked for a family therapist.
Yes.
Yeah.
And talk about that, Raj. So did you go to a therapist, and how did that proceed?
First of all, I got to give my wife a lot of props here because she led the charge on this. I was just clue-free, but very happy to go along with anything. And Susan vetted a therapist and made sure that that individual was not queer-phobic in any manner, and that woman spent time with each of us as a foursome as well as individually, and at the end of it said, first of all, Alex is fine. Alex knows exactly who she is. Are you guys okay with who she is? We don't even know who she is yet. She's 5 years old probably at this point. And so we had plenty of time to think, okay, what is important to us about this whole thing? And after a great deal of introspection, I came to the conclusion that it didn't matter if Alex was gay or not. And at this point, trans wasn't even part of the vocabulary. I think that was way in the future. My bottom line was, I want Alex to be able to feel as though she was worthy of love and could give love. And after that, everything was hunky-dory. I mean, it was just window dressing after that. And we were off to the races after that. Always me gearing to the point where Alex would eventually come to the conclusion that she had to tell mom and dad who she was, and I hadn't made any plans beyond that, but that was the key moment as far as I was concerned. But our language changed as a result of the introspection. I would always say, well, someday, honey, you're going to fall in love and that person will love you back. And you know, that was the extent of it. It wasn't, we weren't using pronouns or any of that kind of stuff. However, and I'm taking a lot of time here, but
okay.
Alex gave us a lot of clues. I mean, we have those class photos that you'll always get when your kid is growing up, and we've arranged them in a frame, and you can see Alex from kindergarten all the way to senior of high school, and Alex looks like Alex. Alex is just looks like this little boy growing up to be an adolescent and kind of androgynous, but you know, this is before taking tea or any of that kind of testosterone or any of that kind of stuff. And Alex just looked like a guy.
So, Alex, as you were living this life and with your parents alongside you, am I correct? You first thought, am I correct, that you were a lesbian?
I never really identified with the word lesbian, just because it really meant two women loving each other. And I did identify with the term gay because at the time it felt like the most expansive term that I had a vocabulary for. And then I guess so that was I guess I came out to my family when I was 15. And I came out to as gay, and I came out as gay too, but queer wasn't even a word that
The
I
language
was using
wasn't
yet.
there yet.
Yes, exactly.
A lot of this language.
At 18, I came out to the rest of the world, my larger, greater family and the community. And then when I was in college, that's when I first kind of was exposed to trans as an identity and queer as an identity in real ways, and I started to adopt that language. And trans identity I didn't really adopt until after college, so I was probably 22.
So how did you experience your parents during this period from the time you were little to the time of graduation from high school? How do you remember them showing up to you as parents?
I remember them being just extremely understanding, and I think that they were empathetic, and they were also human, and also would say, this is our first time dealing with this or walking down this road, and we're all going to do it together, and we're going to try and do the best we can, you know. I think that they were, you know, for me, they were dream parents, you know, and I think that they did as best they could, and I think we all did.
Susan, I remember us talking about when you and I did an interview some time ago, you talked about this concept of letting the child lead. Can you share with our viewers the implications of that for parenting of someone whose gender identity orientation is emerging?
Mm-hmm. I think that a primary job of being a parent is to observe and be empathetic and listen to a child. And I think it's an interesting dance because when you anticipate having a child, or maybe you're pregnant, or maybe you first have a little girl or a little boy, there are all these societal norms. You get all this pink stuff or you get all this blue stuff, and we're really in a binary world. And sometimes, often, parents have real expectations of who their child's going to be or how they're going to grow up or how they're going to develop. And I learned very early as a young mom with my infant babies, and a lot of this I credit with La Leche League, which was a breastfeeding moms support group, to listen and let the child lead, that the child will really teach you what you need to know, and that's not your job to have the expectation and impose your expectations on your child, but to respond and love the child unconditionally no matter what, and the child is going to turn out maybe differently than you thought. So I think that that was a prime way that we parented an infant and a toddler and on through. And then when it was clear that there were gender identity issues, even though we didn't have language specifically for that, what we knew is that Alex wanted Army camouflage stuff for his 6th birthday, or G.I. Joe stuff, not Barbies. And that was clear, and we did that. We gave him those kinds of things that he wanted, and our family responded as well. Yeah. Our larger family also got with the program and understood who Alex was. As he was on a journey, we were on our own journey.
And Raj, were the two of you aligned in parenting from the start, or was there some on-streaming with each other that you had to do?
Oh, I think we were in lockstep. I think Susan was more perceptive and took the lead, and I would say, I didn't think about that, but yeah, okay, let's do it that way. Yeah. And it worked out.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think Alex was being very generous. I think that I can remember very painful missteps where strangers would mistake Alex, would say Alex is a boy, and I'd say, no, she's a girl. And it just, in retrospect, I don't know what Alex's reaction is 25 or 30 years later, but I look back on it very painfully, saying, you should have had your scene together better. But as Susan said, we were using the vocabulary and the construct that we had at the time, and those are the mistakes I made. I own them, but I'm not proud of them.
Well, it seems to me that the two of you have been so present as parents. And I know at one point, Susan, you have told me about the fact that, Alex, when you went to have surgery, I believe it was in San Francisco, your mom came out and spent time with you during that period, correct?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, she came out for at least a week or two. Yeah.
And just share a little bit what was going on at that point and how she showed up for you and what was happening.
So I was 25 when I had my top surgery and when I went on testosterone. It was quite a process to get to that point. I had to have a number of medical letters signed that this was medically sound, that I was of correct mental health, stable mental health, that kind of thing. Then the waiting list was probably 6 months out and that kind of thing. But when it finally came, I loved the doctor who I had. I was working with Dr. Brownstein at the time. He was in the Bay Area and very popular, talented surgeon. My mom came out to help take care of me, and it was in and out, after just a few hours, and I was just ecstatic. There's, after you have a double mastectomy, you've got these drains on the sides of that are still kind of tubes in, and you're going to drain a little bit of fluid for a week, and so we would have to take those out and measure them every day and how much fluid. Hopefully the fluid's going less and less, and I still had a compression vest on for that first week or two to try to just keep the fluid out and not backfilling in. But then we had a follow-up appointments and. But it was great. She's a very, very nurturing person inherently and very capable, and took great care of me while I was in recovery.
I think for a lot of cisgender people, the notion of what it means to experience gender dysphoria or physical dysphoria, it's very hard to wrap your head around it. Can you share with us sort of your description of what that feels like, and how would you describe it to somebody who doesn't understand it and hasn't experienced it?
Sure. I would say, as you guys were talking, I was thinking about this kind of arc of growing up and how gender comes into your life, and even just your own sex, it becomes more prominent or you become aware of it. And I think that I remember being in the 4th grade, and I would have friends over and we'd play, catch football or flag football or something in the backyard. And I remember I always wanted to be on the skins team. And around 4th grade, I remember Dad coming up to me and be like, "You're not gonna be able to be on the skins team for too much longer." And that's not, it's not, you're fine. I'm not upset with you about that. But that was a moment where I was like, my body is betraying me. And I was feeling this betrayal happening. And it was, it was no one else's thing but mine, and I didn't know how to, it's kind of like, and I think the best way I can relate it to someone else is to take the gender and the stigma and all that away from it for a moment, to think about when you feel a betrayal of your own body, or if you're feeling like, gosh, like, if you're wanting to work out a bunch but your body's not responding at all, and you're like, body, get it together, or if you're unable to do something and you wish that your body could perform better or something like that. I think that we can all relate to moments where we're disappointed by our body, or our body disappoints us, and it felt like a failure or a betrayal there that I lived with and tried to manage in different ways for, I don't know, 20 years. And it's hard.
Was puberty kind of a crisis point?
Oh,
a pain point?
Puberty was terrible.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. And, I think that especially, before the internet was also really offering a lot of support to our community in the way that it does now, and people are able to find each other and information. There was a lot less information sharing. So that kind of broader support system and community building didn't exist when I was growing up. And, I, up until age 22, I was the only trans person I'd ever met. And I might have seen a magazine article maybe with somebody, but it's a very lonely place to be. And that one of the reasons I moved to the Bay Area was because I started seeing there was queer and trans populations and community, and they were having art shows. I mean, they were successful. They were thriving. They weren't just existing, they were thriving. Yeah. And I wanted to be around people where I wasn't the only one who had a story, but I could hear other people's stories and relate to them.
So to a young person today who might feel that they are transgender but doesn't quite know what to do or how to process that information, what's your advice to them?
My advice is to try and find community, and to try and find people who will love you and accept you, and to try and be yourself as much as possible, and in a way that feels safe. And I would just seek out friends and support them and let them support you back.
I know, Susan and Raj, for you, in terms of finding support and resources, I think you turned certainly at some point to PFLAG, right? And to other organizations for insight and support?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, Rick. I'm wearing this Unity and Community t-shirt, which is part of Lower Cape Pride. I feel really happy that Lower Cape Pride exists. It's a robust, nascent organization. And yes, PFLAG has been a wonderful organization, and I highly recommend it for queer folks or allies who want to know more, who want to come to a support group where people just tell their stories. And we're all on a journey. We're all on different pathways, and people need to feel patient with themselves and with others as we make our way and figure it out and get down to love and acceptance, which is really the basis of all good things.
PFLAG, of course, got started. It was originally known as, it was an acronym for Parents and Friends of Lesbians and Gays, but nowadays, of course, it's more inclusive than that. And locally here, it's a resource that people can avail themselves of in regular online meetings, Zoom meetings, to talk about issues like this. And Raj, how about you? Where did you find support for being the parent of a transgender son?
I think, frankly, that we were very blessed in the sense that our immediate family and loved ones and community outside. I mean, we were part of a fairly tight-knit community in central Pennsylvania, and we got nothing but, hey, that's great, or what, you're surprised? I mean, it was not, there was never a discouraging word. As a matter of fact, Susan and I have been writing a Christmas poem since the late 1980s, and during the dawn of the internet, we transformed into an online or an emailed poem, and the theme that we used when Alex came out as trans was transformation, and so we had transgender was just one of the many trans things that we built into the poem, and we figured, you know, this is how we tell the world, and it is part of who we are, and we never, you know, that went out to, over 100 people, and we never got anything but high fives.
Yeah.
And I think to that degree we're very blessed. We've surrounded ourselves with good and loving people.
You know, I think one issue we should talk about a little bit here, because it's become so salient, is healthcare for trans people is under attack, especially with trans youth.
Mm-hmm.
And I would really love to hear how each of you feel about that issue, what emotions it brings up for you, and how you think we need to address that to meet the needs of families and transgender folks out there. So Alex, maybe I'll start with you on that.
Yeah, great question, and it's a really unfortunate, I think, situation we're dealing with right now. I think that, as a trans adult, I have my own issues and fears to deal with, but I think that it's got to be particularly scary, I think, with youth healthcare being kind of under attack. Obviously things are going state by state right now, but I think that it's very scary to there's driving some of this healthcare underground is really scary. It makes that things are going to be unregulated. People are going to seek help in unsafe environments, and similar to abortion access and that kind of thing.
Yeah. You're concerned that it could go that way, really go back alley, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I think people are buying stuff online, and it might not be regulated. We don't know what it is or who's, where they're getting it from. And I know that, even during the pandemic, getting testosterone or getting the needles, maybe testosterone would come in to the pharmacy, but the needles didn't. And so I couldn't take testosterone without the needles. And so I think that there's a real fear of even access of the regular kind of medical supplies to be, cut off and that kind of thing.
Yes.
So the solution is for trans people to stop being under attack,
Yes.
So I don't really know how this gets resolved, other than they stop being kind of demonized and othered in the way that they're in the spotlight and being that way. But I know I have got friends who have young trans kids who are really questioning where they live right now and the safety of their kids coming up, and saying, are we in a safe place? Do we need to move to a safer place? And it's really sad that they're having to have those conversations and thoughts.
Susan and Raj, I understand you're not medical doctors, but do you have a perspective on how parents, especially in this fraught time, should address this issue with their children? How does one have that conversation about sort of exploring and letting the child lead, but enabling or facilitating the child's exploration of themselves? What's your view on how parents should approach that? Raj?
I think that the data is in that a queer child who is not accepted at home is more likely to harm themselves than someone who has loving adults in their circle. I do feel as though whatever measures you can take to support your kid are going to be very important. I think we know a lot more about being trans, for instance, than we did when Alex was an adolescent. And we know that early intervention, to some degree, either delaying puberty perhaps, could be very pivotal in terms of the emotional well-being of the child. So I think that the attacks that are going on right now are heinous, and they do not have the child's well-being in mind. Anybody who says that, I think, is being disingenuous. I think that there's a lot of scapegoating going
and
on.
Disinformation that's being put out there about mutilation and kids going to school as one sex and coming home as another.
And citing false, just ridiculous narratives and ridiculous studies, stuff that's just made up out of whole cloth. So it makes me very angry, and I do feel as though if you are a parent and you need to put your child's welfare at the center of your actions, then if you need to uproot and go elsewhere, then maybe that's what you need to do.
And to find physicians and a medical community that is trans knowledgeable and is there to be supportive.
That's my take, yes.
Of you. Let's pivot in our last few minutes. I want to talk a little bit about, Raj, you're a writer, among other things.
I am.
And share with us what you write about. And is it coincidental that you write in your books, you write historical fiction about a transgender protagonist? So share with us a little bit about the book series that you're writing.
The book series that I'm writing is called Rian Krieger's Journey. And Rian is half Irish and half German in 1840s Philadelphia. And as a novelist, one of my jobs is to put my characters in dire circumstances and then get them out of those dire circumstances. And when I was starting with the very beginning of my book, I figured what could be more dire than being transgender 140 years before the term was coined. And once I got going, I thought, this, and bearing in mind that this was in the late teens, 20 teens, in my hubris, I thought, I'm going to be part of the movement that is going to get this ball over the goal line, and people are going to fall in love with Rian, and they are going to say, well, once they figure out, when we get to book 5, that Rian is transgender, well, I love Rian, and transgender seems to make some sort of sense to me, so okay, maybe I'll recalibrate my attitude about trans people. Now I just feel as though we're striding into a headwind, and rather than leave breadcrumbs and let people learn to love Rian, I'm just saying up front, spoiler alert, Rian Krieger is trans, and please read the book.
Was Alex the inspiration for you writing about
100%.
Okay. Alex, you're familiar with the books, I'm sure, and do you see yourself in them at all, or?
I mean, yes, absolutely, and I think that my dad has created a very unique character with their own story and in a different time, and I certainly relate to the character in some ways, but it's definitely not. I'd say a portrait of me. I think that we're very different people or characters, and I certainly, and also even life experience, just knowing my dad, I see my dad in a lot of these characters as well. I mean, not specifically the trans experience, but like the woodworking and getting into detail about building and being in the shop, and it harkens back to being a child, growing up and watching him in the shop, or learning how to use tools and that kind of thing, which we did a bunch. So
tell us just a little bit about you today, what you do for work, what your life is like.
Yeah, today I feel very lucky. I have a job that I really love. I work on building outdoor public spaces and placemaking work, and so I get to think about how public use spaces. I think about visitor experience. I work on large scale adaptive reuse projects. And I think about wayfinding, and I work with artists putting up murals. I build sculptures. I work with landscape architects and building out native landscapes, kind of greening industrial areas. So my job is both, it can be very hands-on, and I can be really in the weeds with it and building and crafting, or I can also be more in the strategic planning side of things, and thinking about something that we're going to build out over the next 2 to 4, 6 years. And so taking the longer view with specific projects, but it's a very creative job, and I feel grateful because I feel like that it uses a lot of my skill sets, which is, I think, kind of a wide gamut of skills. And growing up on a farm, building a lot, and farming, with being in the garden with my mom or being in the wood shop with my dad. I grew up in a very kind of hands-on, kind of child of the land kind of way, and fitting into, I'd say, the kind of modern workforce and trying to figure out how to these things kind of come naturally to me. How can I apply them? And I feel like I've found a nice little niche for how to apply that skill set. And so yeah, that's what I do in the world today.
And do any of your coworkers know you're trans? Does that come up?
Yeah, yes. Almost all my coworkers know that I'm trans, not all of them. And it's not necessarily something we talk about in the workplace. I'd say, because I'm also in the construction industry, essentially, like, I'm not talking to my crews about this, but my friends who are my close buds in my work, certainly. And yeah, we do talk about it. Yeah.
So one question I have to ask you before we wrap here is pronouns.
Yes.
And this is a little bit of a bugaboo for even some very progressive, liberally minded cisgender people. Mm-hmm. Why all the focus on pronouns? Share with us, if you would, why this discussion is so important.
I think there's a lot of different ways to, I guess, have that conversation. I think that it's important that people feel seen and respected. And I think at the very basic level, people want to go by the pronoun that they want to be called the pronoun they choose. Yeah, I think it just comes back to basic respect, but I think there are lots of different conversations that could be had around. I know for a long time there was a conversation of they, them, and that's not grammatically correct. And, this kind of thing. And I think that hopefully, our society has gotten over that non-binary identification, but there's also the list of pronouns is really growing. So I don't have them all, memorized, or nor would I assume that I know someone's gender preference or identity. So I think the kind of a basic rule of thumb is just to ask someone their gender preference, and you can also disclose yours to kind of bring down the how much focus it feels like you're putting on another person, that you can also disclose your pronouns. And but yeah, I don't know why it's actually such a big deal. That's it shouldn't be. It's I think it makes people, it brings back that fear factor thing that we were talking about before of scared to know what someone first to be called. I don't think it should be that big of a deal.
So if a empathetic, sympathetic, interested cisgender person wants to learn more about the transgender world, where would you suggest they go to educate and inform themselves?
Oh, I would be researching online. I don't have the trans Bible to, I don't have the cisgender experience. So you might be asking the wrong person.
To add to that?
Yeah, I think it's important to educate ourselves, to open your heart and your mind, to find other people from whom you can learn, to read books, to put yourself into meetings and groups of people that can help you learn, and to be open. And I think when people meet queer folks and listen and are curious and non-judging, I think the fear factor goes way down.
Yeah.
It's, I feel very, very lucky as a mom and as a human being to be the mom of a trans son, because Alex has helped us open a world that I wouldn't perhaps know as well or know as quickly. So I feel really lucky. So go find queer friends and trans friends and listen, don't judge.
Yeah. Raj?
One of the most joyous occasions that I have had recently was going to the Lower Cape Pride Parade, and we had a ball, and there was a lot of love in, I mean, this sounds almost trite, but there was a lot of love in the square when we launched, and I didn't know everybody, but I got to know a lot more people than I did know, and everybody to an individual was just warm and enthusiastic and happy to be there and inclusive. And, I assume they knew I was straight, but I have no idea. And there was a lot of warmth and a lot of acceptance.
So for those of you, those viewers who might be listening or watching this broadcast from off Cape, the Lower Cape Pride event, it was a first ever event this year that was organized. It brought together members of the LGBTQ plus community and straight allies and cisgender friends for really a wonderful 3-day event in Brewster and Orleans. And I just wanted to pick up on what you both were saying. PFLAG, of course, is a great organization. I had my first exposure to PFLAG, I'm dating myself, 47 years ago. I went to my first meeting. It is a great resource, and there are over 400 chapters of PFLAG around the country, and it is a great resource for anyone who might be listening to really attend and to find a community of support, hope, and engagement there. Well, as we wrap up, I just want to give each of you a chance. Any thoughts that you have as we wrap up our conversation today? Alex, I'll start with you. Any things top of mind that you'd like to offer in the way of a send-off?
I guess I would just say that we're in uncharted times right now, and I would just say reach out and check in on your friends. It means a lot, and be an ally to the trans community and the queer community. Yeah. And it's powerful, and we're gonna make it through this.
Yeah, we are. Yep. Susan, how about you?
I have a lot of hope. I just do not think this is a permanent cultural condition. I think it's aberrational and hateful, and I just do not believe that hate wins in the end. And as Alex said, reach out, support one another, resist in any way that you can, and when you need to take care of yourself, do that. Yeah. And don't give up your hope.
Yeah. Raj, I'll give you the last word.
Wow. Well, I think that practicing your empathy would be a really good thing to be doing right about now, and practicing empathy for people who are not in your circumstances, and therefore look around and try to exercise that empathy muscle.
Yeah. Well, Susan, Raj, and Alex, I want to thank you all for being here today and really informing us about this world. And I think you are really an inspiration, both individually and as a family, and I include the others from your family that are not here. So thank you so much for being on this episode of Taking It From Here.
Thank you, Rick.
Thanks, Rick.
Wonderful.